Tonight I want to open this up with a question, and that question is, what do you value most? What in your life do you value most? And of course, the right answer to that, or the answer should be your relationship with God. And with that answer in mind, I want to ask you again, what does your schedule say you value most? What does your energy and your effort say you value most? Be thinking about that as you turn to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12, and we'll start in verse 15. We've been talking about this in the class upstairs, and it kind of got me thinking about an application of this, making that into an invitation. So, just before we read, I want to give a little context. So, Jesus here at the beginning of the passage has been warning about how the Pharisees are hypocrites, and really what the things they're doing may seem like they're building their relationship with God, when in reality they're just building their physical reputation, and they're helping themselves, their physical self. And throughout the chapter before this parable, Jesus is trying to take the focus off the physical things and investing in the physical, and instead investing in the spiritual. So, starting in verse 15, and he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grains and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax. Eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God." So Jesus opens up with saying, keep a close watch on yourself. And I think we all need to be watching and be careful of how attached we can get to our physical possessions, or how people view us in this physical world, like this man was doing here. I also want to note the urgency that Jesus emphasized about this man's situation, and how urgent it became because verse 20, this night his soul was required of him. And I'll touch back on that later, but I want us to turn to James chapter 4. James 4. Mark your Bibles in Luke chapter 12, because we'll be coming back. But turn to James chapter 4, and we'll start in verse 13. We see the same type of urgency on this topic in James chapter 4. James 4 and 13 says, "Come now, you who say, 'Today or tomorrow we will go into such and such town, and spend a year there and trade and make profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, 'If the Lord wills, we will live and do this and do that.' As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil." So here, James makes a point that when you're focusing on the world, when you're investing and putting all that time into the world and not leaving God in those plans, you're really disrespecting God and all that he's done, because in reality he's giving you all that he had. Like that, those things and those crops that the man had back in Luke, that was all given to him by God, but he did not include God in any of those plans. I also want to touch back on that urgency. This person in question in James chapter 13, who's boasting about the next day, he really doesn't realize what his life is. So I've been able to, one time we went to San Francisco, and I remember the fog there. It was crazy. It's nothing like we have in Alabama. And James says, for you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. And I remember when we were driving through it, I was like, man, we've been in this for a long time. It felt like we were never coming out. And you can't see the end. You're just in the fog. You never know when you're going to come out. And then all of a sudden you're out and it's daylight. And that's kind of what I think James is talking about here, what your life is. You really never know when it's going to end. You're just along for the ride. So with that in mind, let's go back to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12, and I'm going to reread verse 20 and end the night with that. But God said to him, "Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?" You never know when you're going to come out of that fog. You never know when your soul will be required of you. The scary thing is, just like the man in this parable, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So you need to ask yourself, what have you been investing in? What do you really value most? Do you value your physical things, like this man here in the parable? Or are you really valuing that relationship that you need to have with God? If you haven't done that like you should and want to change that, we'd be happy to assist you if you come forward as we stand and sing. Amen.